Aha!
How do again? I think last time we spoke I was spraying some paint on these top suspension arms on the front. I've done one. I'll just give you a quick look see. That's the one I've just done. Black paint's not the best. I might have to go over those with something a bit more hard wearing, but as you can see I've got the top suspension donut thing in there, but I'll go through it. The only thing I haven't done on that is grease the bearings, so remind me to do that. So this is the one I haven't done. Still got the masking tape on, so I'll just pull that off. Off the two ends, keep those free of paint, and then out of this hole. So I don't want paint going in this donut pin hole. The trouble is just trying to get the bleeding stuff out. There we go. Yeah, there was a lot of rust in there, which I had to get a little drum sander bit in there just to scratch it all out. So yeah, so that's bare. There's no bearings in there. Put that one to one side. We'll get the shaft assembly and the plate which goes on the subframe tower on the outside, but we will get to that bit a bit later on. Where the other one's gone. It's gone somewhere safe, probably in the box. So we need to open this up. Do the nuts, the spring washer and the stepped washer. The washers are different each side of this. One of them is a stepped washer, so that goes on the forward facing part of the assembly facing into the engine, and the non-stepped washer there which goes towards the bulkhead side of the car. Take these rubbish rubber seals off. So that's our assembly. What do we need to press them together? Well, I've got this M12 threaded rod. It measures 160mm long, but you can have it a bit longer. But I think 160mm long is about as small as you want to go. We will take the nut and the washer off the one end. All I've done is from the old pin assembly, I've used the old washers because they're quite nice, big and chunky. get the arm, get the one bearing, and I tend to put these with the flat face pointing outwards, so once it's in you get to see the little bit of writing that's on there. So that will try and press its way into there with a rounded part first. Get your threaded rod with the big washer and the nut on. Feed that through the opposite side. So it comes through the new bearing. Put the other big washer on. Put the nut on and create the threaded rod sandwich. Try and get the washers to sit central as best you can on what you're doing. I am going to put a little bit of grease around the outside of that bearing shell. Probably doesn't need it, but I'm just lubricating the entry. So M12 rod threaded through, big washer, nut, two 19mm spanners, and all you're going to do is tighten the one nut up and squash that bearing cage in there. No rush. So yeah, you'll see it starting to find purchase within the arm itself, and just keep tightening that up until it completely disappears into the arm and you physically can't tighten it up anymore. Going in, no bother, can't feel any binding at all. I'm not really putting too much effort into tightening this nut up. Go. Let's just slacken that back off a bit. Take the one nut off. Wash it. Get the other bearing race. Put that on. The big washer on. Just make sure it's all square-ish. Just give it a nip. Yeah, so There we go, all ready for squeezing in. A bit of grease. Just a film of grease, you don't want any more than that because it'll only squash out anyway. And then do the double slather thing. That's it. All tight. Release. Save the threaded rod tool for another day. Your mini toolbox collection. Yep, there they go. One side in, the other side in. Might as well stick a bit of grease in there. I'll just use a bit of multi-purpose grease for these. It's not like they get really hot or anything like that. It's not going to start melting and running off. Plus I'll inject some in through the grease nipple there. I'll just load these needles up. So I did mention these rubbish rubber seals you get. I think these ones on here are the same ones you get on the rear radius arm pivot as well, same size, but some of them are just disintegrating even in the box before I've even put them on. They're starting to split on the edge. I think I had one over here which was just absolute rubbish. Can't remember what I did with it. Here it is. Yeah, brand new out the box. And it's starting to split on its shoulder. They're going to last 5 minutes. So what I've done is I've made these glorious purple ones, and what I've done is I've made them out of this silicone hose. Yeah, looking at this, the diameter of it is, I think it's really thick actually. It's about 6 mil thick, the wall of it, but the internal bore is about 30 mil. Looking at that, 30, squeezing it, 31 mil. Outer diameter is about 44, but this is a standard off-the-shelf item available in all colours, and I've cut 8 mil slithers of it. So they are the same internal diameter They are the same internal diameter, would you believe, looking at that, but this one is obviously a much bigger external diameter, but I don't think that's going to cause an issue, but we'll see. So I'm going to make these, but this hose is quite awkward to cut, especially small slithers of it, because it just wants to deform as you're putting any pressure on it. You can't saw it because it just feathers up and collapses. You can't grind through it or anything. You've got to literally blade your way through it. So the technique is get yourself a relative sized hose clamp and push it down the tube, the hose rather, the allotted 8mm. It's not the easiest job in the world, and at this point you've got to ignore for the moment this big fat knuckle on there. So 8mm. There, because you can fasten these hose clips on not even square, so try and get it parallel with the end. And then tighten it up. There are other websites, YouTube videos and websites which show you how to do this as well. May explain it better than me, but tighten that on. I use this little foot, it's 30mm diameter foot from Screwfix, one of these screw-on cabinet feet, just to push in the end. Just let that hose hold its shape, and then the knack is, I've been told, is starting at the hump there, is slice using the edge of the clamp, the hose clamp, as a cutting edge. So you're tending to bias the blade towards the edge of the hose clip to try and get a parallel cut. But I'll give it a go. So, start it off there. It's got to be a very sharp blade. Treat yourself to a fresh blade. Bias towards the keep rotating the don't cut where the hump is, just release it off, push it round a bit to move the hump along. Just to finish that cut off, try and line it back up with the cuts you've already made. As you can see, it's Not as quick of processes. Go. Yeah, so that's been cut off there. I wouldn't say it's laser guided, but you get these pretty parallel thin slivers, and these are all going to get squashed up anyway. So as long as you've not got great big chunks hanging off it and big gouges, and they're relatively parallel, you might get a few little bits of surging going on there, but hopefully these will last a damn sight longer than these rubber ones. So yeah, that'll go on, fit nicely over the top of there, like so. Like I say, I don't think the bigger diameter is going to be much of an issue. If it is, I'll have to have a rethink. Just stretch it over this one, because that shouldered washer is of a slightly larger diameter. Yeah. Bob's your uncle. Complete a mundo. Thanks for watching. Right here, we've got these top arms made up now. I think because we've created these special bits of rubber on, we better try and see if these things fit in. Unfortunately, I can't fit these with the normal pin because I haven't got enough room with the engine in the subframe. You'll see what I mean. If I just slide this pin out of this assembly now, just take the nut and the spring washer off, and then just and there's no way you can feed this in through there. You just haven't got enough. You haven't got enough angle to do it. So if I take that off, yeah, there's no way I can get that in like that. And even if I take this pin out, and then feed that into there, it slides in quite nicely. There is a bit of resistance on the rubber, but you can just feed that round. I haven't got the room to feed that into there because the gearbox is getting in the way. If the engine wasn't in the subframe, it wouldn't be an issue at all. But there's no way I'm going to get that in there because it's coming at it at an angle. So for this example only, what I've done is I have taken the old pin and I have, hopefully that won't drop out of there, I've just cut the old pin into two parts so I can feed the long part through into there before I put it in. And pop that back in with the long part of my cut down pin. I can get my little bitter pin . Hopefully it's lining that hole the other side. Push that through. So me pushing that little bit of pin in there has pushed the other half of the pin through. This is just to check that everything locates into position. So I'll show you the back end of that in a second, but that's pushed through there now. I've just got to now force this shouldered washer, remember the shouldered one, onto there, and then I've got to try and get that flush-ish with the subframe. So the arm is now in position and located that way. That plate then fits over there. Lines up with those two holes. One is a set screw which just goes into the thread already in the subframe, and that front one there is a nut and bolt. But I'm just going to temporarily hold all this on in position. Whatever you do, don't try and fit these by cutting the pins in half, else you'll never fasten these nuts up or undo them, because the cut down pin will just spin round. So there we go. I'll put that greased up pin safe in a plastic bag with the other one. Picking up loads of crap. Just put that safe out the way over there. So that's sealed off. So as we can see now, we've got this top arm in. It hasn't been tightened up, but those purple bits of hose work really well. They're not fouling on anything, and they're doing a nice squashy seal job against the side of the subframe towers in there. Let's just take you off, give you a bit of a closer look. So you can see how that assembles there. Like I say, this plate will ultimately at the end be bolted onto the subframe, which clamps the entire shaft together. You obviously need this clamp, this plate bolted on there, else the whole pin could slide out back into the engine bay, which is what you don't want. So this arm goes up and down. A little bit of light in there. And those purple bits on. It's kind of trendy. And that's where the longer part of that pin I cut down was sticking through the back. Like I say, whatever you do, don't cut that pin in half and try and fit it that way for ease. Because as you can see, you'll never grab anything to try and tighten or loosen these nuts. You need to do each side at the same time, else the pin will just spin and spin and spin. So there we go, that's the part that fits onto the suspension cone when that gets ultimately put in there. Also I've got this arm, which is the factory lower suspension arm, and this control rod. You can see the problem I've got with that control arm banging into this excess aluminium on the gearbox, which I've marked off, and I need to cut off. It's not doing anything. I'm not going into the oil ways or anything there. It's just something that must have been for a micro part. Yeah, so I'll cut that off, and then what I can do is I can trial fit the hub and disc assembly between these two ball joint holes here. Just a word of warning, these bottom arms are handed, even though they look the same, but you have to be aware that there is a taper on these holes, and the small diameter is at the bottom and the large diameter is at the top here, so the taper of the ball joint gets pulled in there and stops it all rattling about. Yes, so we'll have a rebound rubber there, that's stainless one which came from Mini Spares the other day, and we'll have the 2-hole kind of half egg rubber bit which will fit on there to bang against that. So that stops that when it bangs down, and that's this one here resists it when it bangs up. There we go. Just flick you around the other side, which I've magically done previously. Yep, so that one was cut in half as well. Let me get the light so you can see. But yeah, I had to cut that pin down the middle for this purposes only, because the engine totally gets in the way there. Around the back, and obviously my control arm there is again impeded by the sump. You can see there I've smashed it. I need to smash it a bit more because it is, that light doesn't fall over. There we go. That is still rubbing on the sump, so I'm going to have to get a bit of heat on the sump and try and just flatten that just a fraction more. What I did use on these bottom arms were those mini spares rubbers, bushes, rubbers, whatever you want to call them, and they were quite useful because the hole in them with a little steel sleeve is in there at an angle, so you can turn it and it allows this arm to be in a position for how your suspension geometry is set up. It allowed me to have this rotated round at a slight angle, so the bolt ends up going a little bit downhill through those angled bushes. But I'll take one out and show you a picture of it. Yeah, so that's the control arm going through. There's a one of the rubbers goes this side, and then one of the rubbers goes that side with a big washer and a nut. It's not been tightened up, but it'll replicate what I want it to do. And then I can fit the hub assembly here temporarily, and then I could possibly, while the engine's in, start looking at drive shaft length, because I've got to make new drive shafts from half mini this end on the hub end to half micro into the diff end of the gearbox down there. So I've got to fabricate some micro drive shafts there, but they're my I think they're my thinner ones. They're the thinner micro ones, which I think come on the 1 litre engines. For some reason I think the drive shafts are a different diameter, the splines are different, but I'll check it out. I'll do a comparison. So yeah, that'll be interesting, making those drive shafts. But I've got a lathe tucked behind there, and I'm sure there's something semi-accurate I can try and achieve. Yeah, so that works well. Pleased with that. All good. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit like if you've liked what you've seen, or thumbs down if you think it was crap.